Alrighty, chat. Today, we're going to talk about how to stop watching YouTube in 2026. And I recognize the absolute irony of me telling you to do that as a YouTuber. But here's what I'm seeing, and it's pretty disturbing. We're seeing a lot of people watch more and more self-help content on the internet. And as you watch things like this channel, which, by the way, a lot of our content is great, I highly recommend it, there's an insidious problem that's starting to grow, which is that people are watching content like this, they're listening to podcasts, we're doing all kinds of stuff for our benefit, but it's not actually resulting in a lot of benefit. So here's how this works. I decide at some point to waste a little bit of time. Maybe I'm taking a break from work, maybe I'm going to the restroom, and so I decide to open up something like YouTube because I want a little bit of a distraction, I want to entertain myself a little bit, and then a really, really sneaky thought creeps in, which is that if I'm going to waste my time, why don't I watch something productive, right? So instead of watching some stand-up comedy or some improv comedy sketch or something like that on YouTube, why don't I pull up a Dr. K video or a productivity video or a podcast? And at least that way, when I'm wasting time, I'm actually learning something. So it's not really a waste of time, right? That turns out to be an incredibly insidious thought. Because what I want y'all to think about for a moment is what determines the self-help content that you watch. The scary thing is that our job as YouTubers is to make content that is not helpful, but that is palatable, that is entertaining, that is enjoyable. The metrics we're measured on are not randomized controlled trials where people look at, how much YouTube you watch and how much you actually get better. Those are not the kinds of videos that we make. We make videos that are entertaining. We make videos that get people to click them. We make videos that people will watch to the end. And so what we're actually doing is making content that isn't designed to be helpful. It's designed to be consumed. Now, before we get into oh my God, all YouTubers are evil, I want to take a moment and just share with you that that's actually your fault, not ours. Because I've tried this. If I made a 2-hour, really, really, really helpful video, but it was boring, but it didn't have a clickbait title, but it was not something that was easily doable, who would watch that video? And it turns out that the answer is no one. So there's a very subtle problem here, which is that the self-help content on the internet is not designed in a way to be helpful. It's designed in a way to be consumed. But that doesn't mean that it isn't helpful, right? So people watch this channel. It's hilarious. There's actually a study at the American Psychiatric Association that's being presented this year on healthy gamers content. So this is wild. We are actually being studied by people at the American Psychiatric Association for the value of the content that we produce. And it turns out that our content is about as useful as the American Psychiatric Association's content, right? So these are people that are not trying to be entertaining. They're trying to be helpful. And I watch self-help content, I listen to podcasts, and there's a lot of good stuff there, right? And there are absolutely people that have been a part of this community, have watched this content, it has transformed their lives, and they moved on. The problem, though, is that there are people who have watched content for years. There's people who consume every podcast on the planet. They watch for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and they don't translate it into something. So then the question becomes, what's the difference? And in order to understand that, we have to dig into the psychology a little bit more. When people hear about our coaching program, their first response is usually, why would I work with another human being when I can watch YouTube videos all on my own? Working with a coach is about amplifying your time and effort. We're great at wanting things and even making some progress, but we usually struggle with follow-through or have some kind of setback. And that's exactly where working with a coach can help. Coaches provide personalized support to help you set appropriate goals, make progress, and even work through setbacks. Just let us know what your goals are, what kind of support you're looking for, and we'll match you with the best coach for your unique needs. Check out the link in the description below to see if coaching is right for you. So it comes down to this idea of, let me just watch some content and be more efficient. Right? So this is something that happens so often where If I'm sitting down to do some dishes or clean my kitchen, I'm going to turn on a podcast. If I'm waiting for a cue to pop in a game, I'm going to have HealthyGamerGG and Dr. K on my second screen. So at least I'm using that time efficiently. And so this self-help content that we watch becomes bonus. It becomes free. It becomes incredibly efficient. It becomes something that isn't a priority that I'm dedicating my time to. It starts to become extra. And the problem with that is that if it's something that's extra, if it's something that's free, that means it doesn't cost me anything. I'm gaining something without spending anything. And the moment we shift into that idea, that's when we run into a huge problem. Because the moment that our brain starts to think this is something that I'm getting for free, at that point we become unwilling to pay a price to actually improve our life, because we have tricked our brains, or our brains have tricked us into thinking that this is something I can get for free. So there's a really good example of this, which comes from something called motivational interviewing, which is an evidence-based technique for helping people overcome addictions. So in motivational interviewing, we learn about something called ambivalence, which is sort of this internal conflict. I want to make a change, but I don't want to make a change. So here's the way that this looks. When I start out making a change, when I decide to make a change, I think about the benefit of the change, which is a far, far, far away. Let's say that it's January of 2026 and I'm going to sign up for a gym membership. When I sign up for a gym membership, what motivates me to do that? It's the benefit of going to the gym. It's thinking to myself, okay, if I go to the gym for 6 months this year, if I work out 3 times a week, I'm going to get an awesome beach bod. I'm going to be ready for summer. It's going to improve my health. It's going to be really good for my mental health. There are going to be all these benefits. We do things because of the benefits. And so the moment that I sign up for the gym, I'm thinking about all the benefits, but not thinking about the costs. And then we run into a problem, because when I actually go to the gym, what I do is pay the costs without actually getting a benefit, right? I don't have a beach bod the first time I go to the gym and I'm huffing and puffing and sweating on the treadmill and wondering why I ever came here, and I want to stop and I want to leave early and oh my God, I'm so out of shape. We start to have all of these negative thoughts. So there's something really interesting about human behavior, which is that when we think about a goal, it's all upside. And as we move towards the goal, the cost actually increases. This is why we don't stick with stuff. We start something and we're like, oh my God, this turned out to be so much harder than I thought. And then we decide to move in the opposite direction. Okay, forget about the gym. Now what I'm going to do is make a video game, because that would be really cool. I'd make a lot of extra income. I love video games. It'd be awesome to make a game. I'm so excited. I have all these ideas. And then you start the process of learning how to code. And then you run into bugs. And then you run into more bugs. And you run into more bugs. And then you realize all the work that you put in doesn't really work because you weren't sort of thinking about the architecture of the game at the very beginning. And so then you quit. The way we help people in motivational interviewing is by helping them appreciate the cost. And so if we want to stop wasting our time with self-help content, there's one really simple thing that we need to do. We need to start separating out improvement from entertainment. It's not something that we're doing extra. It's if you are going to improve something, that should be the dedicated goal that you spend. It's not on your second monitor. You are going to sit down and intentionally learn something for the sake of implementation. And like I said, a lot of people have benefited from this channel. I have benefited from a lot of the great content on the internet. And here's the difference between people who benefit and people who don't benefit. Some people start doing the thing and then consume content in a targeted way to improve the thing. I'll give you all an example from my life. I like watching cooking videos, but the cooking videos that are helpful to me are not the random videos that I click on because I think the thumbnail is cool. It's stuff like, okay, if I'm going to learn how to grill, I'm going to spend some time grilling. And once I spend some time grilling, I run into problems with the things that I grill. My carrots are not tender, and if they get tender, they get burned. This was a huge problem that I ran into. So then I'm going to watch a targeted video to help me solve that problem. Here's the big difference. The work, the energy investment, the cost comes first. That is actually the primary thing. And watching content to supplement that comes second. It is not something extra that I'm doing. It's not something that I get for free. I pay the price up front. So if y'all want to stop wasting time on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, One thing that you need to do, there's no more free, extra, or efficiency of learning. Either you are learning or you are wasting time. Don't confuse the two. Hey y'all, hope you enjoyed today's video. We talk about a bunch of topics like this on the channel, so be sure to subscribe for more. If you're already subscribed, GG, and we'll see you in chat.